Go ahead, please.
Oh, oh mon Seigneur, fais de ta beauté ma nourriture, de ta présence mon breuvage, de ton souvenir mon action, de ta louange mon action. De ton souvenir, mon compagnon, de ta louange, mon action, de ta puissance souveraine, mon secours, de ton habitation, mon foyer. Et fais que ma demeure soit les lieux que tu as purifié de l'imitation. Un cinq voile me sépare de toi. Tu es en vérité le Tout-Puissant, l'infiniment glorieux, l'omnipotent. Tu es en vérité le Tout-Puissant, l'infiniment glorieux, l'omnipotent.
Thank you, Ampere. I wanted to welcome all of you. Tonight is a wonderful session, although our friends from Malaysia have not been able to make it, but still a possibility for them to join us. With your permission, I will introduce our speaker who's going to speak about the truths of the Baha'i Faith. We have had part one of this a few weeks back, but Dr. Williams was not able to finish all the slides, and we decided to ask him to come back, and he kindly accepted our invitation to come back. Dr. Williams will follow up on the previous talk. So I mentioned that, and I hope if you have not seen the previous talk, please go to YouTube. I will put the link for you, and you can follow that up. By way of a bio, he always gives me a bio of 2 lines. I don't know why, but that's the way it is, and I have to obey him.
Uh,
Dr. Dr. Kendal Williams is a clinical professor of medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. He has 4 children and lives in the Philadelphia area. He has been a Baha'i formally for over 40 years. Thank you so much for accepting so kindly to be back again. And please go ahead.
Thank you, Farouz. You called me and asked me to do a part two to the discussion I had started, and I had to think about it a bit because I wasn't sure how much more I had to say. But you mentioned I had a few more slides and so forth. So what I decided to do was kind of quickly review the previous presentation I'd given and summarize it a bit, and then just share some other thoughts that I had. I mean, I really had months to put together the first presentation, thinking that would be the only one I'd do, and then of course things changed when you called me, and I had 2 weeks and in the midst of a busy clinical schedule to put together part two. So I did what I could. So let me share my screen here and pull up my thing. There we go. That worked out okay. For some reason I have this little thing there, but looks like you can see me, I think, right?
Yes, of course.
All right, good. So we're making progress. Okay, so that's not the screen I had intended to be on. There we go. So the previous talk I gave was titled The Reality and Truth of the Baha'i Faith. And, what I had really tried to do in that was to put forward some simple ideas. Let me start, however, puts forward some simple ideas that I'll review in a minute. But let me start, however, with just the basic truths of the Baha'i Faith. I think most of you are familiar, obviously, but there may be individuals listening on YouTube on this recording and may not be familiar. And so let me just go over that very quickly. The Baha'i Faith is, of course, now I think one of the major religions in the world. I think we're up to maybe 9 million Baha'is. But it's an extraordinarily diverse community as reflected on this call. And we believe some basic fundamental ideas as taught by the founders of the Baha'i Faith, that there was one God who is the ultimate source of all reality. All the religions of God have all the great religions of humanity, which all we regard as the religions of God, have come from that same God, are reflection of the divine will for their time in history. And because the world is always evolving and changing, the revelations of God also change and adapt their standards to the age in which they appear. So this is why Baha'is can talk about the oneness of religion. We don't believe all religions are the same. We believe that religion itself is evolutionary. And for that reason, it adapts, the will of God adapts the teachings of the great religions to the time in which they live. And of course, humanity has had dramatic changes since even the most recent religions, great religions, have been revealed. Even before Baha'u'llah, there's been a lot of change since Baha'u'llah. And Baha'u'llah revealed a religion that represents what we regard as the standards of God for our time in history. And that the fundamental principle of his religion, as he enunciated it many times and has been enunciated since, is the oneness of humanity, which has vast implications for how we think about our world. Now, in my last talk, I framed it by giving some sort of basic ideas that have come to me over time. And as I thought about them and as I listened back through my talk, I thought these are such simple ideas. Why did it take me so long to figure them out? But, I was just trying to categorize things for myself and for others about the difference between beliefs, truth, and reality. And, what I was saying is that the beliefs are really subjective ideas about about the reality of the world. And that some people hold beliefs that they don't necessarily think are true, but they give them comfort. But ultimately what we believe should be tested against the reality of the world if we want to prove to others that our beliefs are true. And, one of the reasons I think I focus on this as a Baha'i is, Baha'is are not given any credit, So if you say you're a Baha'i, many people haven't heard of it. And if you're starting to tell them about it, we always talk about it in a way that people can understand. Most people have heard about the other great religions of humanity, and they feel like they know them very well. So if you say you're a Christian, everybody says, oh, yeah, I know what Christianity is. And you don't have to feel the need to explain it. But as Baha'is, we've always been challenged by having to explain our faith in an objective way such that thoughtful and rational people could understand what it means. And so for me, as a Baha'i, always trying to explain my faith, I've always been focused on how can I explain my faith in a way that makes sense to others? Now, that is not particularly challenging for the faith because it really does make a lot of sense intrinsically. But nevertheless, we are Baha'is. I am a Baha'i because I believe it's true. Like the Baha'i faith is a true religion. I mean, its ideas are true. What it presents to us are true. Just like I, think that the top of this coffee cup is round, although it's not particularly round. But it's true in that sense. It's not true in a subjective sense. It's true in an objective sense. And we know beliefs are true by the fact that they're productive in the real world, right? They give you real belief. This is what science is, right? Science is taking a potential belief, a belief thing you think might be true, testing it against the actual reality of the world to see if you can demonstrate that that belief is actually consistent with the reality of the world. And when we believe, when it happens, when we find it to be based on our scientific studies, we conclude that it is a true thing, right? So, as Baha'is, we believe that the Baha'i faith is true in that same sense, right? That it is matching the teachings of the Baha'i faith match the reality of our world, the modern world, and that as we follow its teachings, we'll make progress, because progress is essentially discovering more truths about reality and using that for productive truths. That's true in science, and that's true in religion. And so, we don't have sort of a mystical understanding of what truth is. To me, as a Baha'i, truth is the same as truth for everything else. It matches the reality of our world. And if we use its teachings in our lives, we will make progress, because we are matching the reality of the world with the reality of with our beliefs, right? And so, one of the points I made in the previous talk is to, highlight that this is kind of a different way of thinking about religion. A lot of folks in the modern day don't even really go out of their way to make others think that their religion is true. And so, there are a lot of beliefs out there that are religious, and people may promote them, but I'm not sometimes sure that they even believe it's true. They're believing it, they're promoting it for other reasons. And so, from my perspective, just my own personal perspective, if I'm looking at religion, I was personally looking for something that was universal, because we live in a world that's universal. Any concept of God, by nature, is universal. God is the most universal phenomenon that can exist. And so I think a religion in the modern day that hopes to attract all of humanity, or most of humanity, to it, really has to present a way that is fully universal. The religion needs to make sense. It needs to match with reality, not just historical reality, but also modern reality. Like any good scientific theory, the religion should have explanatory power. It should explain other things beyond itself, right? And even have predictive power, right? This is what we look for in a scientific theory. We want it to explain a certain set of phenomenon in a coherent way. And then once we, have proven to it's true, it actually ultimately has predictive power. We can use that to predict the future about what things will be, because we can see, we can predict based on the fact that we know certain things in this moment are true. So I was talking about some of the great religions of humanity and how they are all true, but they were all true for the time in which they were revealed, right? And they present very different standards. So the standards that are presented in the Hebrew Bible as to how people should behave are somewhat conflictual with a modern behavior, right? And you don't have to delve too far deeply into the Hebrew Bible to find some passages that you're like, oh, that's not, that doesn't seem like something we should do. But these are standards that, like, for instance, I'll just give you an example: an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. This idea that, somebody does something to you, you should do it back to them, right? And there was a justice inherent in that. And you can see how that could be the case, why that would create a system of some justice, right? That you do something to one person and they do the exact same thing back to you, an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But, as Gandhi once said, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. And, that was a way of teaching ancient tribal peoples particular standards that could allow them to, operate in the world that existed 3,000 years ago. But, that's not the way, that's not necessarily going to be a principle that we can use to build a successful, peaceful world for all of humanity now that we live in a world together, right? And so Baha'u'llah has this remarkable idea of the progressive revelation, which helps us to understand all of the great religions of God in one perspective. And I'm not going to go through all that. I did it in the last talk, but I put this slide here to remind myself to mention it because, I think that, as I was saying, for me, looking for a religion to believe in, one that I truly could believe in and believe was true, I was looking for something that had, could not only explain the world and be true, but also could has a vision of peace for the planet. And this is what I found in the Baha'i Faith, particularly as it relates to religion itself, because Baha'u'llah's framework of all the great religions being true, but true within their times, um, uh, really not only validated the Baha'i Faith for me, but validated all those great religions as well. So Baha'u'llah has a famous quote where he says, every one of these great religions and their founders is the way of God that connects this world to the realms above, and the standards of his truth unto everyone in the kingdoms of earth and heaven. And he refers to all the founders of the great religions. By that we mean Moses and Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad and Buddha and so forth. They are the manifestations of God, meaning they manifest the teachings of God into humanity. And they are the evidences of his truth and the signs of his glory. So, one of the points I made in the last talk, just as I summarize that talk, is to say that in many ways, for me, the greatest proof of the truth of the great religions of humanity as they exist is the Baha'i Faith itself. And the reason is because by creating, by not only fulfilling those religions, somewhat validating their claims to be fulfilled in the future, but not only that, Baha'u'llah creates a paradigm whereby we can really understand those religions and love them, as long as we understand them within their context and don't take them beyond their context. Because once you see Judaism, for instance, as the great religion that it has been, and the truths of the Hebrew Bible as being so foundational to everything else, including the Baha'i Faith, you can see that, and then you don't have to read the standards that are in the Hebrew Bible and feel that they have to apply to the modern day in order to be true. No, they were true for that time. They're no longer true. We're following different standards nowadays, but that doesn't mean that religion was not ultimately true. And so applying that to Judaism, I can apply the same thing to Christianity, Islam, and so forth, and believe in those religions with the understanding that they're part of an ever-evolving religion. So, so that talk really focused a lot on some of those ideas to understand the Baha'i Faith. But, I think the next part of this is to say, okay, well, now we can understand, gain a perspective on what the Baha'i Faith might be. But, what does it actually teach? What are the truths that match with reality in the modern world? Because the more we follow truth and march with reality, the more progress we will make, right? And so, and the Baha'i Faith's claim and Baha'u'llah's claim is that everything he says is true, right? And reflects the reality of the world, right? So I wanted to spend a few minutes focusing on the Baha'u'llah himself, who, I've over the years come to love with deep affection, obviously. And I think, I say that because I think when I first became a Baha'i, I was very attracted to the beauty of the ideas and the beauty of the teachings. and so forth. Um, and, didn't know much about Baha'u'llah as a figure. Um, and, but a lot of my um, growth as a Baha'i was really from reading Baha'u'llah's writings. And so I became very deeply connected with the writings of Baha'u'llah himself, which of course we regard as Baha'is as the Word of God. And so I'm really connected to Baha'u'llah. So in any case, uh, I read the words with great attention, and I'm constantly just inspired by everything he revealed. So, Baha'u'llah, of course, referred to his revelation as the fulfillment of those that came before him. In this famous quote, he says, "The revelation which from time immemorial hath been acclaimed as the purpose and promise of all the prophets of God, and the most cherished desire of his messengers, hath now, by virtue of the pervasive will of the Almighty, and it as his irresistible bidding, been revealed unto men." Um, One of the statements of Baha'u'llah that I've been struck with more recently in the last few years is this focus on this will, the pervasive will of the Almighty. It's spoken of a lot, and Baha'u'llah tells us that it's really each religion is the reflection of the divine will, the divine act, the divine action in the world, right? And so Baha'u'llah is directly saying that his religion is a reflection of the divine action in the world. And in many ways, the religions themselves, the revelations, including Baha'u'llah's own revelation, is the proof of God's existence. So Baha'u'llah gives beautiful statements about his relationship to humanity. One of the most famous and beautiful is his description of himself as the royal falcon, where he says, "I am the guiding light that illumines the way. I cheer the faint and revive the dead. I am the royal falcon on the arm of the Almighty. I unfold the drooping wings of every broken bird and start it on its flight." And I get a little bit misty as I'm reading these sometimes because the depth to which Baha'u'llah speaks to the human soul, every soul, is so profound and so remarkable that it universalizes our humanity. He speaks throughout his writings, I think, to the depth of every human being in a way that is so to the core of what a human being is. And somehow I managed to shift off my thing. There we go. Now, I'm going to skip over this slide. And I'm going to skip over this one. I'm sorry. I wanted those. I put this together somewhat hastily, and it didn't flow as well as I'd hoped. So, what Baha'u'llah is claiming is that his teachings can help us build a world that thrives and in which all the peoples of the world have the opportunity to really thrive as human beings. And that's what we want, right? And if you ask anybody on their most idealistic conceptions, and oftentimes children express this most clearly, what did you think when you were a child, before you were polluted by the prejudices and tribal qualities of the world? What did you want? We want world peace. We want everybody to be successful. We want people not to experience the pain and difficulties of the world. And we want that for everyone. And many children express that, if you ask them, all over the world in all kinds of cultures. And so this is what Baha'is want. But if you ask most of the folks in the world who might have those ideals, it's a little unclear of how we're going to get there, right? And so what Baha'u'llah's done is really gifted the world with, to some degree, with a map of how and a path of how we can match our actions and our beliefs to the reality of the world that exists, the modern reality, and build a world that is peaceful. I just going to parenthetically, lately, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about artificial intelligence, partly because, and then reading a book, listening to an audiobook about it. Partly because I knew the basic outlines of what AI is, but I didn't really know much about it, and I thought I should really educate myself. So I've been doing that, and of course I pay attention to the world. And what's scary about all of this is that humanity is being gifted technologies that are or discovering and learning to implement technologies that are just absolutely remarkable. And they can really benefit people on an immense scale, bring people out of poverty, extend educational opportunities for people all over the world, bring people into a world community, people who may have been isolated. All of the technologies that we see, the internet, cellular phones themselves, the changes that are happening in finance and even cryptocurrency and all of these things are bringing us closer together as a world, these technologies. But um, we we don't, but yet it seems sometimes like we're being given these things, and it's like giving a loaded gun to children, that we just don't know what to do with them yet, because we haven't grown up as a human race. And so the focus for Baha'is, if we want to build the focus for Baha'is is not so much on these outer aspects, but rather on the human heart itself and how it needs to be transformed in order to live in the world that exists, which is an interconnected, global, modern world. So Baha'u'llah described the world of the 19th century, and I think in many ways, a lot of the patterns that were founded in the 19th century still exist in our world. And he described it as that the world was in despair and its agitation waxed day by day. He said its perversity will long continue. He said the winds of despair are, alas, blowing from every direction, and the strife that divides and afflicts the human race is daily increasing. The signs of impending convulsions chaos can now be discerned, inasmuch as the prevailing order appears to be lamentably defective. And Baha'u'llah describes in his writings, in many ways, how it was defective, where the rulers were focused on their own wealth, focused on their own power. He regarded these rulers as acting as ignorant children, and in the way that they behaved. And yet the entire populations were dependent upon the will of these people. And so he prescribed a remedy that would unlock the power inherent in all peoples, and allow us to together build a world that was peaceful, because it was based on noble principles and ideas and not the behavior of selfish and frankly ignorant individuals. Baha'u'llah said that his finger, described himself as the all-knowing physician. He said, the all-knowing physician hath his finger on the pulse of mankind. He perceives the disease and prescribes in his unerring wisdom the remedy. So the fundamental idea of Baha'u'llah's remedy is the principle of the oneness of humanity. And Shoghi Effendi, who was Baha'u'llah's great-grandson and led the Baha'i Faith for 36 years and wrote so beautifully and so masterfully, explaining the principles of his revelation to the Baha'i community and to the world. Shoghi Effendi described that the principle of the oneness of mankind, the pivot around which all the teachings of Baha'u'llah revolve, is no mere outburst of ignorant emotionalism or an expression of vague and pious hope. He said it implies an organic change in the structure of present-day society, a change such as the world has not yet experienced. Now, when I look at the world and I see the problems that we face, some of them are complex, some of them are not very complex. And I'd say some of the biggest ones are not particularly complex. They're only complex because the individuals and populations that are involved in them are following standards and ideas that simply don't match with the modern world. And if we were able to transition to perspectives that reflected a modern reality, those problems would go away, right? And so one of the fundamental ideas that we can spread throughout the world in everything we do, that would be a healing balm to the world over, is to recognize that all humanity is interdependent and one. And that if we build structures that reflect that oneness, we will be building structures that are consistent with the reality of our world, and we will make progress. So the oneness of humanity is the fundamental idea, and many things branch off of that. Baha'u'llah talked about, if you want to unite people, you need to have justice, right? And so in a famous passage of Baha'u'llah's Hidden Words, he says that the best beloved of all things in the sight of God is justice, right? And in another passage, he says, the light of men is justice. Quench it not with the contrary winds of oppression and tyranny. He said, the purpose of justice is the appearance of unity among men. The ocean of divine wisdom surges within this exalted word, while the books of the world cannot contain its inner significance. And as I have thought about the world, I've thought about this passage of Baha'u'llah and how he says that the ocean of divine wisdom surges in this simple idea that justice and unity are connected. In order to have unity, everyone must be treated fairly, right? So simple idea, profound implications upon the world, profound implications on how we think about how we act in the world, right? And I see this violated all the time, creating further pain down the road. Because if you treat others with injustice, you're simply going to create more pain in the world ultimately. And it's a law. Reality always wins, right? And Baha'u'llah is helping us get out of that cycle and recognizing that unity and peace requires justice. And the most important thing is for us to ensure that justice is served. Another simple idea, but profound implications, is the idea of trustworthiness. Trustworthiness, Baha'u'llah says, is the greatest portal leading unto the tranquility and security of the people. In truth, the stability of every affair depends and doth depend on it. All the domains of power, of grandeur, of wealth, and are illumined by its light. So, before I was studying AI, I decided to study the world economic financial systems. My son is doing a master's in economics in London right now. And so we have these interesting discussions, and he kind of provokes my brain to think about things and read about things, because sometimes I don't really know what he's talking about. And so I try to educate myself. But the world financial system is based on trust. It's based on the fact that it's that those who offer a loan to others, that will be paid back. So people buy the American dollar with the expectation the American government will pay that loan over time. And so really, with the breaking of those bonds would destroy the whole system. So, if it didn't take long for me to study macroeconomics and other principles to understand that, all the domains of power, of grandeur, and wealth are illumined and ultimately dependent upon the idea of trustworthiness. If nations and peoples can't trust each other, then you really can have no progress, very limited progress. And so that's a lot of what's happening in the world right now. Now, however, so I think that, one of the aspects of the Baha'i faith that is so profound to me is the recognition in the Baha'i writings that we can't, that something needs to change in the very character of humanity if we are to build a world of peace. That we can't do it using the same ideas and principles that guided human beings in the past. And so Baha'u'llah says very directly in one of his passages, he says, is not the object of every revelation, meaning every religion of God that comes to humanity, to effect a transformation in the whole character of mankind, a transformation that shall manifest itself both outwardly and inwardly, that shall affect both its inner life and external conditions. And so what Baha'u'llah's focus is in his writings, and Abdul Baha, who spoke after him, is really on this transformation. And you see that again and again and again. And it took me, I think, a lot of years to kind of appreciate the connection between transformation in the exterior world, on the political level, on the level of institutions and power, and this inner transformation that Baha'u'llah is asking us, inner journey that Baha'u'llah is asking us to go on. And it really comes down to a fundamental question, I think. What is a human being? And there are very different perceptions of what human beings are out there. But what Baha'u'llah tells us that a human being is not only inspiring, deeply gratifying, but also challenging. And so, the perception that goes back to this Royal Falcon quote, I unfold the drooping wings of every broken bird and started on its flight. How many people are despairing in the world, seeing themselves perceiving themselves in a way that is much lower than what they can achieve and what they are as humans, right? In a beautiful hidden word, God speaks directly to humanity, to the human soul, and says, I have breathed within thee a breath of my own spirit, that thou mayest be my lover. Why hast thou forsaken me and sought a beloved other than me? Just a beautiful, touching, poignant a way of expressing and asking each human soul, why are you aiming so low, right? I've breathed the breath of my spirit into you, so that you may love me and connect with me, and connect with, for Baha'is, I think what comes out in the Baha'i writings is whenever you think of God, it's our perceptions of God that are defined in the Baha'i writings is really everything that is most noble and good and true, right? And so to love God is to really express in every way you can in all of your life everything that is most good and noble and true. And the purpose of life that religions have fundamentally brought into the world is that it is something beyond the material, that we are not inherently from the world as we experiencing, the physical world, the transactional world that is out there, that our reality is a place above it. And that the process of becoming truly human is the process of moving from the transient to the eternal, from the concrete to the abstract, and really living one's life based on eternal principles and truths, right? And so, we see this in human behavior and human psychology. If people are acting in a selfish way, which is natural to humans and all animals to do so, then, they're really acting according to their own nature in a sense. But what Baha'u'llah is saying, I think, is something very profound, and that is the nature of human beings is not that nature. That is a lower nature. the true goal of human beings is to base our actions not on transactional aspects like animals do, but rather on universal principles, eternal principles and truths, right? So those are abstract. Justice is an abstract concept, right? And so there are whole books and philosophers that spent their lifetime talking about what is justice? How do we apply it in our lives? What does it truly mean? And so to be attracted to those aspects, to those higher aspects, is to become truly human, because that's the world in which we are to live. And if we want to build a world that is peaceful, we have to build a world that in which the principles matter more than the transactional relationships, right? And so this is to become spiritual is really to make that transition from the transactional aspects to a more principled existence. Now, there's a lot in the Baha'i writings that talks about the human heart, and Baha'u'llah talks about the heart, and in the sense that it's mentioned, it seems to me to be the seat of our values and the most sublime aspects of our being. It is the source of art and the expressions of love for all that is not tangible, can be directed towards material desires and stay in that realm, or can reach up to the more abstract and sublime realms as it is our true home. And it reaches its fulfillment in the abstract love we call the love of God, which comes up a lot in the Baha'i writings. In fact, in many ways, the Baha'i writings are all about cultivating this sense of the love of God. Baha'u'llah says it very directly in one of his passages. He says, for everyone of you, his paramount duty is to choose for himself that on which no other may infringe and none usurp from him. Such a thing, and through this the Almighty is my witness, is the love of God, could you but perceive it. Build you for yourselves such houses that the rain and floods can never destroy, which shall protect you from the changes and chances of this world. Some of you may recognize that Baha'u'llah is actually, I think, alluding to a passage from the Gospels where Jesus says something similar about houses built on sand or houses built on sure foundations, right? And so this love of God is the thing upon which we can build the foundation of our life, right? And how we act in the world. Many of you know this story that I'm about to say, and you probably recognize it from just mentioning seeing the quote up here. But Baha'u'llah used many sort of rhetorical ways to express these ideas. And so, when Baha'u'llah was exiled by the Persian and Ottoman authorities from what was at that time the seat of the Ottoman Empire in Constantinople, which is now Istanbul, when he was exiled from that place to a far-off fortress known as Akka, which is in what is now modern-day Israel, so quite a distance away, they were really exiling him and his family and his most ardent followers who went with him to silence him and to silence him from the increasing attractions that he had gained and respect he had gained by the Ottoman and Persians that came through the capital of Istanbul or in Baghdad, where he had been previously. And when he was exiled to these places, it was truly a very harsh exile. When they arrived, they had they were given really no accommodations. They were put in cold prison cells. They were given brackish water, food that was almost inedible. Several of them died. Many of them got very sick. And, Baha'u'llah wrote a tablet back to the Sultan, the head of the Ottoman Empire at the time, and his ministers, the two ministers who had been responsible for his exile and really were responsible for sort of the actions of the government at the time, um, expressing what had happened and telling them about their experiences, but also trying to teach them about the fundamentals of his revelation. And these tablets that Baha'u'llah wrote to the kings of the earth, but including this one particularly to the ones to the Sultan and to the ministers of the Ottoman Empire, are quite powerful. And in that, he tries to teach them a lesson by telling them a story. And the story is that he says it from his own life, where he said when he was a youth, his brother was getting married, and this would have been in Tehran in Iran, or maybe in the north of Iran where his family was from. And so, it was a big event, and there was a lot of folks that were coming, and it was a big deal. And as part of that celebration, his Baha'u'llah's family, by the way, was quite wealthy, so they would have put on a lavish wedding. And so there was a man who came to do a puppet show. And in that puppet show, had shown basically a display and acted out a play that was the court of a king or a shah or a sultan, acting with the people of the realm, right? And so that the display was really the show was really about the kingly court and how they acted. And so Baha'u'llah says that later on, after that had all left, after the puppet show had ended and all of the wedding festivities were over, he saw this man sort of walking out of there with this box, right? And everything that had been was in that box, all the puppet show that just demonstrated all of these things. And he asked the man, well, what's in the box? And what was the nature of that? What was that all about? And Baha'u'llah said that the man said to him, all this lavish display and all these elaborate devices, the king, the princes, the ministers, their pomp and glory, their might and their power, everything you saw are now contained in this box, right? And so the story is a parable, and Baha'u'llah's using it to teach us a lesson. Because he says, ever since that day, all the trappings of the world have seemed in the eyes of this youth, Baha'u'llah referring to himself, akin to that same spectacle. They have never been, nor will they ever be, of any weight and consequence, be it to the extent of a grain of mustard seed. How greatly I marveled that men should pride themselves on such vanities, while those possessed of insight, ere they witness an evidence of human glory, perceive with certainty the inevitability of its waning, right? And so he characterizes the pomp and glory of the imperial court of the Ottoman Empire as something that was completely transient, right? And that would eventually wane and had no inherent value, right? It was a false belief. It didn't connect with the reality of the world, had no productive value, right? And so, and he said, a true person understands that and can separate that which is transient and that which is eternal, right? And that was the purpose of that story. Baha'u'llah, in many of his passages, is trying to help us to make those connections, I think. He gives another example of humanity as being as birds, which soar through the full force of their mighty wings with complete and joyous confidence throughout the immensity of the heavens, until, impelled to satisfy its hunger, it turns longingly to the clay of the earth below it, and then, having been entrapped in the mesh of its desire, findeth itself impotent to resume its flight to the realms whence it came. Powerless to shake off the burden weighed on its sullied wings, that bird, hitherto an inmate of the heavens, is now forced to seek a dwelling place upon the dust. And so, this is another metaphor to help us understand that human beings are inherently supposed to soar, right? In the heavens of beautiful ideas and and not get caught into the world and the traffic of the world, with all the ego and the desires and everything that plays out in that world, right? He God speaks directly to humanity in this passage where it says, "Oh, my servants, could you understand? Could you apprehend with what wonders of my munificence and bounty I have willed to entrust your souls? You would of a truth rid yourselves of all attachment to all created things, and would gain a true knowledge of your own selves, a knowledge which is the same as the comprehension of mine own being. You would find yourselves independent of all else but me, and would perceive with your inner and outer eye, and as manifest of the revelation of my effulgent name, the seas of my loving kindness and bounty moving within you." This is a deeply personal connection that every human can have with God, right? And really feel that power moving within you. Baha'u'llah is constantly calling humanity to really a higher place, a higher form of relationship, so that our actions and our behaviors are really driven by higher desires. He even says, that we should eventually get to the point where we're not sorrowful, except that we're far from God, and not rejoice, save that we're drawing near and returning unto God, right? So the relationship with God becomes the fundamental love of one's life, and everything else flows from it. All loves flow from that. It doesn't mean we don't love our wives, our husbands, and other people in our lives, and our children. But everything flows from our love of God, and we are strong pillars in our communities and in our families and in all of our other relationships, because we're ultimately not dependent on those relationships for our own sense of well-being and happiness, right? And so this is the kind of independence that Baha'u'llah is asking us to try to achieve. And of course, in doing that, it's only a bounty to us, because, once you get that level of detachment and connectedness, you're just stronger. Much of the sorrow of the world doesn't affect you as much. I have just a couple more passages. I think I went a little too high on these beautiful passages, but I kept thinking, which one should I take out? And I couldn't take out any of them. So I hope you humor me in reading through them. Another passage, Baha'u'llah says, "Oh, you beloved of the one true God, pass beyond the narrow retreats of your evil and corrupt desires, and advance into the vast immensity of the realm of God, and abide within the meads of sanctity and of detachment, that the fragrance of your deeds may lead the whole of mankind to the ocean of God's unfading glory." So, it's evil and corrupt desires that are making the world as the place it is when we look at it and worry about it, right? It's passing beyond that and getting above that, that can make the world a true paradise, right? And so, I think that all the teachings of Baha'u'llah, as he enunciated them, really start with this, to me, this mystical connection, and flow from that. That's deeply personal and available to every human, and so it's so universal and beautiful and validating for humans on such a profound level. So, to me, I think all of the laws and teachings that then Baha'u'llah enunciates to humanity are understood, at least by me, and I think are intended to be understood as reflecting that inherent connection of love that exists between the created and the creation, right? Between a father or a mother and their children, which is the relationship of us to God. So anything that is revealed, whether it be a law or a teaching or a principle, is intended for our own benefit, right? Baha'u'llah talks about his own laws, for instance. He says, think not that we have revealed to thee a mere code of laws. Nay, rather, we have unsealed the choice wine with the fingers of might and power. I love that passage. I found it so powerful. When I was a young man reading the Baha'i writings, I really didn't have any context for them. I was reading this, and I'm like, does anybody else know about this? This is amazing. And I remember reading this passage and just being just amazed by it. Why don't people talk about this more? This is amazing. So, this is one passage I remember reading as a youth and just finding it so beautiful. Um, so, um, Finally, I just want to end with a couple other passages. The other thing that is connected to this is this idea of tolerance. That while we're asked to then develop our love for God and then express that in the world, and in doing so, also following some certain laws, Baha'u'llah says very closely, he doesn't want us to do that in a way that would make us seem sort of self-righteous, right? And there's this beautiful passage where he says, the heaven of true understanding shines with the light of two luminaries, tolerance and righteousness, right? So you do the right thing, but you're also very tolerant of others who may not be doing the right thing, right? And so, and he says you need both of those things in order to sort of be a perfect human being. Because if you're self-righteous, you sort of undermine the whole process. And then he says, oh, my friend, vast oceans lie enshrined within this brief saying. Blessed are they who appreciate its value, drink deep therefrom, grasp its meaning, and woe betide the heedless. And, I remember reading this as a younger man and being so struck by it. And also, I remember reading it to my brother and said, did you know, he said, this is amazing. Because it's so much of when I was a youth, it was perception of religion was that people were self-righteous and all these things. And here's Baha'u'llah explaining that, the religion he's teaching, the path that he's teaching is a balance between doing the right thing, but also being tolerant of others. And that these are both in balance. Okay. So, I think that the Baha'i Faith is just so magnificent because we have, as you can see from these writings, such beautiful words that pull us up higher, and because we need to create a new character among human beings, right? And it's not going to happen through some mass media campaign, right? It's going to happen by creating a new culture of connectedness among people while they're all striving along a path of service and growth, trying to make the transition from being selfish, attached, egoistic people to being detached, principled, loving people. And, that's what we're trying to do in the world, is to, sort of cultivate those qualities. And that's what we do in all of our communities. And so, Baha'u'llah tells us in his passage to gather you together with the utmost joy and fellowship, recite the verses revealed by the merciful Lord. By so doing, the doors to true knowledge will be open to your inner beings, and you will then feel your souls endowed with steadfastness and your hearts filled with radiant joy. So, I read this passage as I was thinking about this talk, hastily arranged as it was. And I thought, what I really want to do is just read a bunch of beautiful passages in a coherent way so you could get a sense of this and participate. Basically, what we're doing tonight is participate together. We've gathered together with the utmost joy and fellowship, and then reading the passages of God. So, with that, let me finish my talk. Thank you all so much for listening to me go on. I had intended to do a shorter talk, but it went longer than I expected, but I hope that was okay. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. Ah, you're all still here. I'm a little surprised.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Williams. It was a wonderful presentation. I really, really appreciate it. If there is anyone, Pierre, thank you, thank you. Uh, i- is there any questions? Because I do have a question myself, which is an important question, at least for me. But if anybody else would like to ask a question, please go ahead. Dr. Williams, we are very happy that you accepted to come back for this second portion of your presentation. And if at any time would be possible for you to send this series of writings which you put on a slide to us, we
Sure.
can share it with others. It was such
Yes.
beautiful, beautiful slides. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, yeah. A couple of years ago, I spent a fair amount of time putting together slides with different quotes that I really enjoyed. And so I pull them out and use them in the talks I give when the opportunity comes up. Um, so
Thank you. I'm dying to know, how did you become a Baha'i at the age of 15? But I won't ask you this question because there are other questions, I'm sure it's here and there. So
sure.
I won't ask you this question. Friends, would you like to ask any questions of Dr. Williams by any chance? Or maybe I will ask my question,
Sure.
and then the friends can follow. Uh, as a Baha'i who was born in Iran, the line between self-righteousness and tolerance is very shady
Mm.
because it's a hurtful, very hurtful culture. At the same time, you don't want to be self-righteous. At the same time, the words, the way you're dealt with, it's like a dagger which goes to your heart. Uh, you don't want to be prejudiced, but you have your own feelings.
Yeah.
And of course, you love the uh, uh, the founder of the Baha'i Faith, and should there be an insult, it's extremely painful. Can you somehow uh, uh, expand on the idea of self-righteousness and tolerance, please?
So, um, and first, the Baha'is in Iran have experienced things that I think those of us who are in the West have not. I mean, I can't say I've ever truly been persecuted for my faith. Uh, um, Nor have I think for us, it's been largely because it's been ignored. What's most frustrating is it's ignored, not so much that it's actively persecuted. And so you experienced things that were much more painful than I have ever experienced. Um, but for me, that quote was very meaningful because I think a lot of people are put off by religion because they perceived, at least when I was a youth, I don't know if this is so true now, that uh, religious people were sort of put themselves above others and looked down on others, and were self-righteous, right? Which is different than being righteous. Righteous is doing the right thing. Self-righteous is sort of feeling like you're always doing the right thing and others aren't. Those are different qualities, and one of them is a good one, and one of the other's not so great. Um, but I always found it just so interesting that Baha'u'llah put them together in that way. It was so brilliant, right? To recognize that you have to have both, and that there's a balance between them, and there's a path between them, um, and that they highlighted that so much. So that's yeah, because I think, the religious people I admired as a youth were the people that really found that balance. They were just so loving and kind to others, irrespective of whatever background or wherever they came from or whatever their challenges were in their own lives or ever how they acted. Um, uh, and they rose above all that in a way, in a manner that made that person feel so connected, you know. Um, there's this beautiful story of Abdul Baha, who is Baha'u'llah's son, of course, and he was in Greenacre, Baha'i School in Elliott in Maine, and there was a conference there, and there was a young man who had kind of come from a rough background, and I think he was from Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. And he was his last name was Mortensen, and so he had been in prison and in the Midwest, and his lawyer was a Baha'i, and taught him the faith and started to give him writings, and he became really in love with the faith. So he comes from this rough background, and he didn't have any money, and he wants to go to see Abdul Baha. So he tries to get to Maine. And how is he going to get there? Well, he's going to ride on trains. And how do you ride on trains if you don't have any money? Well, you jump on them, and you ride on the bottom, and you ride on the top. You do whatever you can. And so he was basically a vagrant who was sneaking onto trains to get all the way to Maine from the Midwest, right? And he shows up in this line of people greeting Abdul Baha. Now, in the time of Abdul Baha coming to the U.S., the faith had spread largely actually within fairly wealthy, but wealthy families from New York and Boston and other places. And so, the folks in that line weren't really used to a guy that had come in and, smelled like he'd been riding on train. I'm sure he smelled terrible, it smelled like all the oil from the brakes and all that, right? So he shows up in this line with Abdul Baha, and everybody notices him. He's all dirty, Abdul Baha greets him, and then he starts talking to him and asking him all these questions. And he says, "Well, how did you get here? Where did you come from? How did you get here?" And he said, you know, "Well, I came from the Midwest." And he said, "Well, how did you do that?" And he said, "Well, I rode on trains." He said, "Oh, how?" So he ends up telling him, Abdul Baha was very interested, and he eventually admitted the fact that he'd basically stowed away on these trains, right? And Abdul Baha says, "Well, tell me how you did that," right? So he was very engaged with this guy. So this man just ended up loving Abdul Baha and spending all his time with him. Became a devoted Baha'i, moved to, I think, Florida, and raised a family. And I think some of the members of that family are still Baha'is to this day. But that's just a nice example of this connection between tolerance and righteousness, right? Sorry about that. I give these long-winded answers, just like I
No,
give long-winded talks.
any story about Abdul Baha is always welcome.
Yeah.
How lovely to see you, Louise. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Okay, I do understand that, Dr. Williams, Kendall, but there's certain space between our emotions and Abdul Baha's understanding. I would like to repeat this question. Are we allowed to get hurt? Are we allowed to feel disrespected? Are we allowed to show our emotions? Or as a good Baha'i, we should just be kind?
I think we have really good examples, Firuz, in the writings of how Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha responded to these persecutions. And they weren't meek about it. They were meek in their own way, but not, when Baha'u'llah wrote to the kings and rulers of the earth who had persecuted him, he was very firm,
That's
right?
right.
He spoke very clearly about how they had erred, and the mistakes they had made. So I think that, part of our responsibility is to tell people how they have erred, there's a story of Dr. Martin Luther King when he was a child, youth, I guess, riding with his father, and he's riding in a car, and this white police officer pulls him over. And so, this is in the deep South in the 1940s or whatever. And this officer pulls him over, and his father gets out of the car, and the man refers to his father as boy. He says, "You come here, boy." And he said, Dr. King told the story. He said, "My father stood up tall. He said, 'I am not a boy.'" And he pointed at Dr. King. He said, "That is a boy. I am not a boy." You know? And so the man immediately was sort of struck and felt put in his place, but understood the respect that you can feel with that, right? So I think, being persecuted or being challenged creates an opportunity for you to express um, the principles, right? And to help use it as an opportunity for education. Now, these are of course, extraordinary people. Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, even Dr. King's father, who exhibited just tremendous dignity. But I think you can, my point is, I think you can do it and respond to persecution in a way that doesn't that isn't meek, but also very clear. Um, so, there's another story that I'm reminded of. Baha'u'llah was arranged to meet J.P. Morgan, right? The J.P. Morgan, right? The original founder of it was probably the most powerful bank in the world now, right?
You
And
mean Abdul Baha.
Abdu'l-Baha, right? Abdu'l-Baha, right? And so Abdu'l-Baha goes to meet him, and he's got all of his trophies and all of his stuff up there, and he does, and J.P. Morgan doesn't show up, right? So J.P. Morgan then sends a messenger, says, he doesn't have time, and he's gotten pulled into other things and so forth. And Abdu'l-Baha is asked to write in his book, being a visitor, you write in the book. And Abdu'l-Baha wrote, and I can't quote it exactly, but it wasn't bashful. He said, basically, "I'm sorry to have missed you. You missed a great opportunity at a very important time." And, to uh, uh, I remember, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it was something like, you really kind of messed up here. You had the chance to meet me, the son of a manifestation of God, and you got involved in your own trivialities that were not as important, and you missed it. And that's basically what he said. But of course, it's true, right? I mean, the biggest thing that J.P. Morgan could have done was meet Abdu'l-Baha. In the next world, I'm sure he's feeling like that would have been the most important thing he could have done. So that, I'm sorry, there's a couple stories that just came into there.
Thank you. I'm writing them all down. Thank you. Thank
Well,
you
your
so
Canadian friends, your
much.
Canadian friends, you're in Toronto,
Uh-huh.
and there's this wonderful blog done by a couple of Canadian friends called 239 Days, I believe.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I think I've lifted those stories from there. So they're on
Okay,
there somewhere. Yeah.
okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciated, Kendall. Is there any more questions? It's 8:30, and at this time we usually start our devotions. Before
Boy, there were so many questions last time. I'm sorry, I must have been a much less engaged talk. Sorry, I hastily put it together, but I hope
Kendall, it
okay.
was beautiful. Last time we had a very exciting fireside, and there were friends from all over,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of emotions, and it was an interesting evening. I'm glad that tonight is a calmer, at least for my own nerve.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
a yeah, I'm glad I was able to be here with you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. and particularly we had our friends Empire from Africa who participated in most of it, but he wouldn't have um, enough time or whatever to stay longer. But tonight was very special, particularly because you answered the questions with the stories of Abdul Baha. And this
Mm.
is extremely important because we always look up to them and we always understand by looking up and trying to follow them. Thank you so much. Uh, Nushinjan, I wanted to welcome you. This is the first time I'm seeing the name Nushin Sobhani in our sessions. Uh,
Yeah, aloha everyone. It was really nice talk. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I came actually twice before, but I couldn't stay for the whole session. So today I'm glad that I was able to.
Tuesday. Nushinjan, can we see your face?
Yeah, sure, 1 second. Let
Okay,
me just get myself.
okay. I know some people, this is their first time, and so uh,
You have a great you have a great thing going here, Firuz. It's very impressive.
Yeah.
Nushinjan,
Hi,
welcome.
everyone. Thank you.
Hi, lovely to see you. Where do you join us from?
I'm actually in GTA in Vaughan. But I work in
Okay,
Toronto. I actually recently came to Vaughan. And I work as an AI developer at BMO. So I think you are in Toronto, so maybe we can meet in person one day.
sure, why not? Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
Mm.
Nice
so
to meet
much for joining us. Appreciate it. Thank
you. You too.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you, thank you. You never know, Kendall, who is where from joining us, Congo or Tanzania or whatever. But all in all, I can tell you that this is a very warm space, and this is the continuation of the work of Mrs. Akdas Javid, who met the Guardian. Because you said a story, I will give you this quick story and then ask Farah Nazjan to ask her question. Uh, Dr. Javid was supposed to go to Germany and continue his study, and Mrs. Javid was just dying to serve the faith. They went to see the Guardian for a pilgrimage. Dr. Javid, who was the cousin of my father, said to his wife, "You don't get too close to the Guardian because the Guardian will tell you to go to Africa." And you know that we can't go to Africa because I have to go to Germany to continue my studies as a physician.
Yeah.
So she didn't say much, although she had that kind of a zest to answer. Jalal knows, but anyways. So what happened was that she kept her space, passing by the Guardian, and the Guardian told him, "Mrs. Javid, study English." Nobody knew why that phrase was shared. Nobody knew what was going on. Mrs. Javid, remembered this. And uh, somehow at some point, the Germany didn't work out. And from Canada, there was an acceptance for him to
Uh,
come to Canada and continue his studies as a physician. The first thing that they did, first of all, they came to Dundas Hamilton. They created the most beautiful space. And Mrs. Javid had the most vibrant fireside, which is declared by the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Canada, which has had the most new Baha'is.
is that right?
When she passed away in 2018, some people continued her work. This is one of them. And we
That's
know
amazing.
that we don't do a thing. This is her soul pushing this forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Paranazjun.
Allah. First of all, I want to thank Mrs. Masroor for inviting such a knowledgeable speaker. And I have no question. I just wanted to say a comment here that when I came to America from England, it was 1971, and I resided at the campus of Penn University. And I was
Great.
in that area for about 12 years before I traveled around the world. And you reminded me so much memories from those times when I was a student. And I want to say Baha'i world is such a small world that when we travel everywhere, I went to China and I went to India and I went to England, and everywhere I would find someone who's a Baha'i, and then, oh, you know, so and so. So it just resonated with me, your talk, and I'm glad I came tonight, and I enjoyed your talk very much.
That's lovely.
And
Thank you.
thank you so very much. And
Do you remember what years were you at Penn, did you say?
I went to MBA school in St. Joseph.
Oh, yeah.
But I lived at the campus of Penn University.
Yeah. What years were those?
It was 1971,
Yeah.
and I was there until 1982, when I moved to Texas.
Oh, that's neat. Oh, yeah. So the
Yeah.
Baha'i Center in Philadelphia is not far from St. Joseph's University. It's
You
just
have a Baha'i center in Philadelphia?
Yeah, there's a Baha'i Center in Philadelphia that's
Oh.
really right on the edge of the city, just as you get towards St. Joseph's. But the reason I was asking you, and Firoz, you had mentioned the fireside that had been going on for so many years, and you
Yeah.
asked me about my background. But there was a fireside that was given by a gentleman, Lee Titchener, and his wife Vi, and they had it every Friday night for years. And many people became Baha'is through this fireside in Philadelphia. And it may have been going on, but it's when you were there.
We didn't have a Baha'i center at that time, but maybe it was
No.
built after that.
It was, yeah, that came in the 90s.
Yeah.
But at this time, there's a lot of people that became Baha'is through that singular fireside that was considered, including my own father, who was a student at the vet school at the University of Pennsylvania when he learned of the faith. He asked a woman out for a date, and she didn't want to go on a date with him. So she didn't want to go on the date.
Tell him call
She said,
me.
well, Friday night I have this sort of philosophy group I go to, and he said, well, what is it? And my father was sort of open-minded, and so she said, well, it's kind of, and she didn't really want to say what it was. And then finally she told him, he goes, well, can I come?
Wow.
She was a little annoyed because she didn't really want to go out on a date with him. And they never actually did go out on a date because she didn't want to go out on a date. But he started going to this fireside that and then he kept going to the fireside, eventually became a Baha'i. It's kind of a funny story.
Wonderful. Tell him come to California.
Yeah, but California's nice. My wife is from California.
Yeah. But you reminded me of those times very much.
Yeah, nice times. There are a couple, I think there's somebody sneaking there from the Philadelphia area, was on the call earlier. I don't know if she's still
What was the name?
Taraneh Mahajer.
Taraneh, are you here?
Oh, I don't want to put her on the spot. She'll get
Yes,
mad
I am here.
Oh, Taraneh, you're going to get mad at me.
Not at all, no. I love this fireside, and Fruz knows that I'm one of those that log in right away before
Oh, is that
as soon
right?
as
Oh,
it
so you're always
starts.
here.
But I don't
Great.
show my face because those flowers much beautiful,
I
more
know.
beautiful than my face.
No, I wouldn't say that, Turner. You have a beautiful face. We're dear friends going back many years to
I'm
when I
sorry,
was.
somehow I cannot hear you guys.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Tarone Jr., you're more than welcome to come every week. We the people who join us create this space. It's not me or anybody else, it's all of you together. And I don't know how to appreciate it because words are just too weak to express the emotions. Would you like, uh, Kendall, to start our prayer, to say a prayer for Mr. Kitchener, who taught the faith to your dad?
Yeah, sure.
Why don't we start that? Then maybe Jalal John, you can say a prayer for Mrs. Javid. And Nushin John, can you say a prayer as well?
Yeah, sure. I can actually say it in my other language,
What is your other language?
Arabic.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
you have, this is wonderful. Of course, we've not had many people who actually said prayers in Arabic. Jalal, I know that it's the time is ticking, and sometimes you have to leave where you are. But anyways, so anybody else who would like to Gibby, are you there?
I am, sweetie, but I'm coughing a lot.
Okay, thank you, Gibby.
But
Gibby is my,
otherwise, I would say a prayer in French.
I
Next,
know,
next
I
time.
know.
Thank you for
Yeah,
asking.
thank you. Kendall, Gibby is my French Canadian sister, and I had the opportunity for the first time to go to New Brunswick, and she actually offered her bedroom, which was the bedroom of Mary Antoinette. So as a result, we really became sisters together.
That's great.
Yeah. Gibby, thank you for being here. Kay, thank you for being here. It's okay. Uh, Leslie, if you feel like saying a prayer, please go ahead, Kendall. This is for Mr. Kitchener. Can you say his first and last name one more
Yeah,
time?
it was Lee Tichenor. Tichenor, Tichenor. Lee
Okay.
was the smartest man I've ever known, and he was a piano tuner by profession. But he read a book every week. He read one book a week. And the reason he decided to tune pianos as opposed to doing anything else is because it was something that he could do that would allow him to have time for reading.
Oh,
He was a
wow.
brilliant guy, and it was really fun to talk to him because he could he quoted all of these famous authors and books and told stories, and he's just a wonderful man to talk to. Very interesting. Brilliant family too. His son still lives in the area, and really terrific. So he had done a lot. His father had become a Baha'i in the time of Abdul Baha, and he did not become a Baha'i until he was in his 40s. And he had gone through a phase. He was an atheist, and then he started to study the faith, and he really became quite dynamic in it for several years. So taught a lot of people.
Wow.
So this is for Lee.
Thank you.
You ready? Yep.
Please.
Glory be to thee, O Lord my God. Abase not him whom thou hast exalted through the power of thine everlasting sovereignty, and remove not far from thee him whom thou hast caused to enter the tabernacle of thine eternity. Wilt thou cast away, O my God, him whom thou hast overshadowed with thy lordship? And wilt thou turn away from thee, O my desire, him to whom thou hast been a refuge? Canst thou degrade him whom thou hast uplifted, or forget him whom thou hast enabled to remember thee? Glorified, immeasurably glorified art thou. Thou art adored in thy truth, and thee do we all verily worship. And thou art manifest in thy justice, and to thee do we all verily bear witness. Thou art in truth beloved in thy grace. No God is there but thee, the help in peril, the self-subsisting. Baha'u'llah.
O God, my God, I beg of thee. O God, my God, I beg of thee, by the ocean of thy healing, and by the splendors of day star of thy grace, and by thy name through which thou didst subdue thy servants, and by the pervasive power of thy most exalted word, and the potency of thy most august pen, and by thy mercy that hath preceded the creation of all who are in heaven and on earth, to purge me with the waters of thy bounty from every affliction and disorder, and from all weakness and feebleness. Thou, O my Lord, thy suppliant waiting at the door of thy bounty, and him who hath set his hopes on thee, clinging to the cord of thy generosity. Deny him not, I beseech thee, the things he seeketh from the ocean of thy grace and the day star of thy loving kindness. Powerful art thou to do what pleaseth thee. There is none other God save thee, the ever forgiving, the most generous. Baha'u'llah.
هو الله ربي ربي نحن فقراء وأنت الغني الكريم ونحن عجزاء وأنت القوي القدير ونحن أذلاء وأنت العزيز الجليل أيدنا على عبودية عتبة قدسك ووفقنا على عبادتك في مشارق ذكرك وقدر لنا نشر نفحات قدسك بين خلقك واشدد أزورنا على خدمتك بين عبادك حتى نهدي الأمم إلى اسمك الأعظم ونسوق الملل إلى شاطئ بحر أحديتك الأكرم أي ربي نجنا من علائق الخلائق والخطيات السوابق والبليات اللواحق حتى نقوم على إعلاء كلمتك بكل روح وريحان ونذكرك في آناء الليل والنهار وندعو الكل إلى الهدى ونأمر بالتقوى ونرتل آيات توحيدك بين ملأ الإنشاء إنك أنت المقتدر على ما تشاء لا إله إلا أنت العزيز القدير آمين.
This was the first time we had an Arabic prayer. Nushinjan, thank you. Please come back every Thursday. We appreciate it. It was beautiful. It was magnificent, actually. Friends,
Thank you.
we have 5 more minutes if anyone. Kendall, if you have to put kids in bed or whatever, we wouldn't want to keep you here. But 5 more minutes. So friends, if you would like to say a prayer. Bob, would you like to say a prayer?
Sure, thank you. O my God, verily I invoke thee and supplicate before thy threshold, asking thee that all thy mercies may descend upon these souls. Specialize them for thy favor and thy truth. O Lord, unite and bind together the hearts, join in accord all the souls, and exhilarate the spirits through the signs of thy sanctity and oneness. O Lord, make these faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Strengthen the loins of thy servants in thy service of thy kingdom. O Lord, thou possessor of infinite mercy. O Lord of forgiveness and pardon. Forgive our sins, pardon our shortcomings, and cause us to turn to the kingdom of thy clemency, invoking the kingdom of might and power, humble at thy shrine and submissive before the glory of thine evidences. O Lord God, make us as waves of the sea, as flowers of the garden, united, agreed through the bounties of thy love. O Lord, dilate the breasts through the signs of thy oneness, and make all mankind as stars shining from the same height of glory, as perfect fruits growing upon thy tree of life. Verily, thou art the Almighty, the self-subsistent, the giver, the forgiving, the pardoner, the omniscient, the one creator.
O Lord, my God, assist thy loved ones to be firm in thy faith, to walk in thy ways, to be steadfast in thy cause. Give them thy grace to withstand the onslaught of self and passion, to follow the light of divine guidance. Thou art the powerful, the gracious, the self-subsisting, the bestower, the compassionate, the almighty, the all-bountiful. Abdul Baha.
I cannot thank you enough for making tonight so special. Thank you very, very much. Kendall, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Peter, it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, correct?
7 minutes to 2.
Sorry, excuse me. Peter, you're so cool about it. I don't want to make a big thing out of it. Oh, Bob, Bob, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Nushinjan, thank you for participating. Bonnie, thank you, thank you, thank you. YACY, thank you. Azar Khanum, خیلی خوش. به به. We always miss him. And as Persians would say, his place is empty with us, but I'm sure he's in the next world happy, probably participating in this fireside. Thank you, Azar Khanum.
Yeah, merci. Thank you so much for wonderful program. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for the wonderful talk. Please come more.
Thank you, Azar.
Love you. Thank you. Thank you, Furuz Khanum. You have a beautiful Zoom. Thank you so much. You always have lovely speakers, lovely friends attending, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you, thank you, and know that we miss him. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we really miss him a lot.
Yeah.
But thank you for remembering him. That means a lot to me. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Friends, Bob let Louise know that she owes us a prayer. And because she wasn't here, maybe 2 prayers.
Okay, I will. And sorry about the cow. I clicked on something by mistake.
Oh, I thought you wanted to be happy. Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tahira Khanum, thank you. Khanum Badiyan, thank you. Gibi, merci bien, thank you. Simi Khanum, merci تشریف آوردین. Farahnaz Jun, thank you. Nushin, we love you. Come back next.
Thank you, First Khanjan. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Williams. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Jalal Jan, merci umadi. Love you all.
Thanks first for inviting me. I enjoyed it very much.
Kendall, we love you.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Beautiful,
you.
Bye-bye,
beautiful.
everybody.
Bye, bye.
Bye.
Peter, bye. Peter, go to bed.
Papa, thank you.